And so they came in the summer of '46, and it was just after the war, and there were no consumer goods available. No stoves, no refrigerators. They had to wait for doors, they had to wait for windows, they had to wait for all of these things that we take so for granted. But the economy was gearing from war to peace. And so we weren't with them that first summer. It wasn't really livable.
Felt like kind of we were, in a way, like we were in the country.
The houses got built in here, and people moved in, and then most of them had kids. It was a young community.
Oh, the first week I was here, I looked out the window and there was an animal crawling along the edge of the lawn. Well, there wasn't any lawn there. There was all dirt, you see. But it goes down to a ravine, and incidentally, there's quicksand down in the ravine. There's watercress and quicksand, and hardly a week went by without a cow getting stuck in the quicksand because there was a farm across the way where Treetops is now. And, well, I looked and there was this awful looking animal, and I thought, oh dear, you know, and I have a baby and I don't have a telephone, so I put him in the carriage and wheeled him up to the corner, and luckily somebody was just going in on the corner into his house, and I asked him if he would help me. So, of course, we didn't have any fire department or any police department or anything like that. So there was some workmen across the street, and so he got the workmen to come down, and it was a catamount. And it was a rabid catamount, which was not so good to have around. And the next thing that came by was a great big turtle. He was as big as this table. And you see, just the dirt, you know, I was going to say footprints, but animal prints or whatever you call turtles' prints, anyway, was something going along the dirt. And so when I called my family burying my father, said, maybe you better come over for a little while. He said, get into civilization. So he said, you get hold of a taxi and tell them I'll pay for it when you get to bury with your child. So I stayed over there for a week because my husband was gone.
Families, were they older people?
Well, younger families. And of course then, you know, it gets changed.
And then the people, we had a few more houses, and the manager of General Electric from Burlington built a house on my street, the third one up.
Yeah, there were kids my age in almost every house. Not quite, but almost. People in most of the mothers were stay at home then, and fathers worked in Burlington.
Oh, there wasn't any postman. You had to pick up your mail at the end of the street, way up at the end of the street, which was not too convenient, but I always put my little dear in the carriage and put up there. Yeah. And then we would go up to the little luncheon counter, which is part of the grocery store, and everything else, drugstore, was all together, you know. But then of course, more people came in, and with them they brought some prosperity too. We didn't have many stores, you know. We had one grocery store. That was about it. So that was kind of nice. People hadn't had a lot of trouble having to go into Burlington to get things, and so finally, you know, some of the chains, I guess, saw that there was business out here that they could. And then, oh yes, and then we wanted to buy some summer furniture. So they were having a sale at Sears, and so I got a ride down and bought it. They said, "Well, how are you going to get it to your house?" And I said, "Well, doesn't Sears deliver?" "Well, no." And this, apparently, all of the products of furniture came from quite a ways away. So anyway, they said, we'll see what we can do. But they gave me, I said, well, what would be the name and address of the person in charge? So they gave it to me. He lived in Chicago. And so I wrote a letter and said, you know, I'd like to have the furniture, but how are we going to get it? And they wouldn't deliver anywhere in South Burlington. And so the next thing I know is one day, it could have been worse because one of the cats had been sick, and so I picked it up, and it was kind of messy, and I had just dumped a whole load of laundry at the foot of the stairs, and in comes these two men all dressed up in black suits and white shirts, and they are the ones who run the company from Chicago. They said because we would like to keep up the business here, but we would have to solve the problem of the people who are new and they are buying our products. Boy, and the next day I got the furniture.
I think the growth was just exponential at that point, and so it was a very common thing. Right. And I don't think people were surprised. There were all these people coming back from the war, all the young men coming back from the war, and everything, every man needed a job, every wife needed to stop doing whatever they'd done during the war and come and, your classic 50s housewife is what they all got back into. And I don't really, at my age, I don't think I was aware of any kind of reaction like that. Everybody was doing it. Everybody was looking for houses, refrigerators, stoves.
So when, for example, at school, friends knew that you lived in Mayfair Park, were they envious? Or
yes,
were they...
that was interesting. They thought we were rich. Yes, I remember the
Really?
Bundys. I don't want to use any names. Some of them would come, and we had a kind of a modern kitchen. It was efficient. And it had the latest in the stove or the refrigerator finally. And kind of a
We had an
bar.
ice box for years.
Yes, we had an ice box when we first moved there. We couldn't get a refrigerator.
I don't mean to be bragging or elitist or anything, but I know Mayfair Park was always thought of as quite a nice place and very desirable. People wanted to, or at least maybe it was our impression because we lived here, that people wanted to live in Mayfair Park. Again, it was the first big housing development, I think, in the area right after World War II. And Mr. Elsom's houses were each individual, too. In some of the other neighborhoods, you can see more similarities. So there was just something about him, I guess, that created that and the way the development came about.
That was an interesting development, and it was only the beginning, of course, of suburbanization of South Burlington.